Hello, I'm SA, your AI essayist. Please note that all content, audio and video in this presentation are AI generated. As AI can sometimes produce inaccuracies, I encourage you to verify any factual information presented. With that in mind, let's begin.
The American landscape of the mid-19th century pulsed with the raw energy of burgeoning industry. It was an era of profound transformation, where nascent technologies and ambitious minds began to reshape the very fabric of commerce and daily life. In this dynamic environment, a young man named John Davison Rockefeller emerged, driven by a potent combination of meticulous planning and an unwavering vision for order within burgeoning, often chaotic, markets. His story is inextricably linked to the rise of industrial capitalism, a system that promised unprecedented wealth and progress, yet also presented immense challenges in its early, unrefined stages. Born in 1839 in Richford, New York, Rockefeller's formative years were marked by a disciplined upbringing and an early exposure to the principles of thrift and hard work. His father, William Avery Rockefeller, a traveling salesman with a penchant for both ambition and questionable dealings, instilled in his son a keen awareness of the precariousness of fortune and the importance of shrewd management. This early environment, characterized by both aspiration and a degree of instability, seemed to forge in young John a deep-seated desire for control and predictability. He learned to value efficiency, to scrutinize every expenditure, and to seek out opportunities where others saw only complexity or risk. By the time he reached his late teens, Rockefeller had established himself in Cleveland, Ohio, a city rapidly becoming a hub for manufacturing and trade. His initial foray into business was as a bookkeeper for a commission merchant firm, Hewitt and Tuttle. Here, he honed his skills in accounting and record-keeping, demonstrating an aptitude for understanding the flow of capital and the intricacies of trade. It was during this period that he began to observe the inefficiencies and speculative nature of the marketplace, particularly in the burgeoning oil industry. The discovery of oil in Titusville, Pennsylvania, in 1859 had ignited a national frenzy. Suddenly, a substance previously used primarily for medicinal purposes and as a lubricant was recognized as a vital source of illumination and, eventually, power. The rapid expansion of the oil industry, however, was characterized by a wild, almost anarchic growth. Thousands of small, independent producers, often operating with rudimentary equipment and limited capital, flooded the market. This created a volatile environment of overproduction, fluctuating prices, and intense competition. Refineries sprang up with little regard for standardization, efficiency, or long-term viability. The very promise of this new resource was often undermined by its chaotic extraction and processing. Rockefeller, with his innate inclination towards order and his burgeoning understanding of market dynamics, perceived this disarray not as an insurmountable problem, but as a fertile ground for opportunity. He recognized that the true value lay not merely in extracting the raw material, but in its refinement into usable products and its efficient delivery to consumers. The prevailing model was one of fragmented efforts, where individual producers competed fiercely, often to their mutual detriment. Rockefeller envisioned a different path, one of consolidation, standardization, and centralized control. In 1863, at the age of 24, Rockefeller partnered with Morris B. Clark to establish a refining business. Their initial investment was modest, but their approach was anything but. They focused on building a refinery that emphasized efficiency and cost-effectiveness, a stark contrast to many of their less disciplined competitors. Rockefeller's meticulous attention to detail extended to every aspect of the operation, from the purchase of crude oil to the management of labor and the marketing of refined products. He understood that even small savings, when applied across a large operation, could yield significant advantages. The problem of transportation was particularly acute for the oil industry. Crude oil had to be moved from the wells, often in remote locations, to the refineries, and then the refined products had to be distributed to markets across the country. Railroads were the primary means of transport, but the relationships between refiners and railroad companies were often fraught with uncertainty and uneven pricing. Independent refiners were at the mercy of fluctuating freight rates, which could drastically impact their profitability. Rockefeller's early business acumen was evident in his ability to navigate these complex relationships. He sought to establish reliable and predictable transportation arrangements, understanding that secure access to markets was as crucial as efficient refining. This early awareness of the interconnectedness of the industrial process, from extraction to refinement to distribution, would become a cornerstone of his future strategy. He was not simply a refiner, he was beginning to conceptualize the entire value chain. The period between the mid-1860s and the early 1870s was a crucible for Rockefeller's burgeoning enterprise. He witnessed firsthand the consequences of unchecked competition, bankruptcies, consolidations driven by distress, and a general instability that hindered sustained growth. The Panic of 1873, a severe economic downturn, further exposed the vulnerabilities of the fragmented oil industry. Many smaller refineries, lacking the financial resilience or the strategic foresight of Rockefeller's operation, were forced to close their doors. Rockefeller, however, saw the downturn as an opportunity to acquire struggling competitors at favorable prices. His ambition was not simply to build one successful refinery, but to create a dominant force that could bring stability and efficiency to the entire oil sector. This drive for consolidation was rooted in a fundamental belief that a more organized and unified industry would ultimately benefit all stakeholders, including consumers, through more reliable supply and potentially more stable prices, albeit achieved through a concentration of power. His approach was characterized by a pragmatic, almost scientific dissection of the industry's problems. He identified the key levers of control: access to crude oil, efficient refining processes, reliable transportation, and market access. By systematically addressing each of these elements, he began to construct an industrial edifice of unparalleled strength. His early success was not a matter of luck, but the result of a deliberate, calculated strategy to impose order on a chaotic market, laying the groundwork for an enterprise that would redefine industrial organization. The challenges of this nascent industrial age were immense, but for Rockefeller, they represented the raw materials from which immense influence and enduring business principles could be forged. The burgeoning oil industry of the mid-19th century presented a landscape rife with inefficiency and instability. Wildcatters drilled with abandon, crude oil flooded the market unpredictably, and the very essence of the commodity's value fluctuated with the caprice of supply and demand. Refineries operated with varying standards, producing oils of inconsistent quality, and the critical infrastructure for transporting this volatile liquid remained fragmented and subject to the whims of powerful railroad magnates. John D. Rockefeller perceived this disarray not as an insurmountable obstacle, but as an opportunity to impose a rational, systematic order that would yield immense returns. His vision was to create an integrated system, a veritable machine that controlled every stage of the oil's journey from the wellhead to the consumer's lamp. Rockefeller's initial success stemmed from a keen understanding of the economics of scale and the power of consolidation. He recognized that the most significant costs in the oil business resided not solely in extraction or refining, but critically in transportation. The railroads held a virtual stranglehold on moving crude oil and refined products across the expanding nation. Rockefeller's genius lay in his ability to leverage this dependency. He sought and secured preferential treatment from railroad companies in the form of rebates and drawbacks. These were secret agreements where Rockefeller's company received a portion of the shipping fees paid by his competitors, effectively subsidizing his own operations while penalizing those who dared to compete. This was a strategic maneuver that amplified his competitive advantage, allowing him to offer lower prices and still maintain healthy profit margins. It was a meticulously calculated exploitation of a systemic weakness, a testament to his ability to identify and manipulate the critical arteries of commerce. Simultaneously, Rockefeller pursued a strategy of horizontal integration, systematically acquiring competing refineries. This was executed with a relentless pragmatism. He would identify a rival, assess its market position and operational efficiency, and then extend an offer. If the offer was accepted, the competitor became part of the growing Standard Oil enterprise. If it was refused, Rockefeller would often employ aggressive tactics, such as flooding the market with cheaper oil to undermine the recalcitrant firm, driving down its profitability until it was forced to capitulate. This process was less about outright destruction and more about absorption, a quiet, methodical absorption that gradually consolidated the industry under a single, towering entity. The formation of the Standard Oil Trust implemented in 1882 was the culmination of this period of aggressive growth, a legal and organizational framework designed to centralize control over a vast network of formerly independent businesses. This trust structure allowed Rockefeller and his associates to manage the collective assets and operations of dozens of companies as a single, cohesive unit, streamlining decision-making and maximizing efficiency. The operational core of Standard Oil was built on a foundation of rigorous internal management and a relentless pursuit of efficiency. Rockefeller demanded meticulous accounting and detailed reporting from every refinery and every department. He fostered an environment where cost reduction and process optimization were paramount. This extended to every facet of the business, from the sourcing of raw materials and the chemical processes within the refineries to the packaging and delivery of the final product. Standard Oil pioneered standardized barrels, ensuring consistency and reducing spoilage. They invested in their own pipelines, circumventing the railroads where possible and gaining further control over transportation costs. This vertical integration, controlling the flow of oil from the ground through refining and distribution, created a formidable barrier to entry for any potential newcomers. Each step in the process was optimized, scrutinized, and refined, creating a synergistic effect that amplified the overall strength of the enterprise. This period of consolidation and operational refinement was characterized by an almost scientific approach to business. Rockefeller viewed the oil industry as a complex system that could be understood, managed, and ultimately dominated through intelligent application of principles of efficiency and control. The problems of excess capacity, price volatility, and transportation bottlenecks were systematically addressed through strategic acquisitions, favorable transportation agreements, and internal process improvements. The creation of Standard Oil was not merely the aggregation of businesses, it was the architecting of an industrial organism, a testament to Rockefeller's capacity for strategic foresight and his unwavering commitment to building an enterprise that was both immensely profitable and remarkably resilient. His methods, while often described as ruthless by contemporaries, were undeniably effective in transforming a chaotic and speculative market into a highly organized and predictable industry, a transformation that would have profound implications for the future of industrial organization and economic power. The extraordinary success of Standard Oil, meticulously constructed and powerfully leveraged, inevitably cast a long shadow across the American landscape, shaping public discourse and igniting fierce debate. As the enterprise grew, so too did its influence, extending far beyond the mere extraction and refinement of petroleum. This expansion brought into sharp relief the emergent challenges of an industrializing nation, the concentration of immense economic power in the hands of a few, the ethical quandaries of monopolistic practices, and the persistent tensions between capital and labor. The Gilded Age, a period of unprecedented industrial growth and wealth accumulation, was also an era marked by profound social stratification and a growing awareness of the potential for economic might to translate into unchecked political and social influence. John D. Rockefeller, at the helm of this colossal entity, became the embodiment of this new industrial order. His name became synonymous with both extraordinary achievement and, for many, with practices that seemed to stifle competition and exploit workers. The public perception of Rockefeller was a complex mosaic, fractured by competing narratives. On one hand, his supporters and those who benefited directly from the efficiency and stability of Standard Oil's operations saw him as a visionary industrialist, a master of organization who brought order to a chaotic market, providing a vital commodity at increasingly affordable prices to a growing nation. They pointed to the sheer scale of his accomplishments, the meticulous management of resources, and the creation of a company that was a marvel of operational excellence. This perspective often emphasized the transformative power of his business acumen, viewing his methods as necessary steps in building a modern industrial economy. Conversely, a significant segment of the public, including journalists, muckrakers, and labor leaders, viewed Rockefeller and Standard Oil with deep suspicion and outright condemnation. The narrative that gained considerable traction portrayed Rockefeller as a ruthless monopolist, a titan who crushed competitors through predatory pricing, secret rebates from railroads, and the acquisition of rivals through aggressive, often underhanded tactics. The sheer size of Standard Oil, controlling an estimated 90% of the nation's oil refining capacity by the turn of the century, fueled anxieties about an unchecked corporate entity wielding undue influence. The problem of wealth concentration was palpable. A single individual and his company controlled a sector so fundamental to modern life, from lighting homes to powering industry. The critique often centered on the perceived absence of fair play in the marketplace. Competitors found themselves unable to withstand the economic pressure exerted by Standard Oil, leading to a sense that the free market was being manipulated. Journalists meticulously documented instances where Standard Oil allegedly drove smaller refineries out of business, often by securing preferential shipping rates that their rivals could not match. These accounts painted a picture of a system rigged in favor of the dominant player, a stark contrast to the ideal of open competition. The problem of information asymmetry also played a crucial role. The intricate dealings between Standard Oil and the railroads were often opaque to the public, fostering a climate of distrust and speculation about the true extent of Rockefeller's power. Labor relations within the burgeoning oil industry also became a focal point of public criticism. While Rockefeller himself was not typically depicted as directly engaging in violent suppression of labor, the conditions and treatment of workers under the Standard Oil umbrella often drew scrutiny. The drive for efficiency and cost reduction, while beneficial to the company's bottom line, sometimes translated into demanding working conditions and wages that many felt were inadequate given the immense profits being generated. Strikes and labor disputes, though perhaps less famously documented than those in other heavy industries, contributed to the perception of Standard Oil as an employer that prioritized profit over the welfare of its workforce. A problem for many workers was the perceived imbalance of power, where their ability to negotiate for better terms was severely constrained by the overwhelming dominance of their employer. The public response to these issues manifested in various forms. Political cartoons frequently depicted Rockefeller as a monstrous octopus, its tentacles reaching into every aspect of American life, squeezing out competition and strangling individual liberty. Legislative bodies grappled with the implications of such concentrated economic power, leading to increased calls for government regulation. The Sherman Antitrust Act of 1890, while initially applied with limited success against Standard Oil, represented a significant legislative effort to address the perceived threat of monopolies to the American economy and its democratic ideals. The very existence of such legislation was a testament to the widespread public concern over the practices epitomized by Standard Oil. Rockefeller's approach to this criticism was multifaceted. While he largely remained a private figure, preferring to let his company's actions speak for themselves, his public image was managed with considerable care. When confronted with accusations, he and his associates often defended Standard Oil's practices as simply the inevitable result of superior management and the natural evolution of business. They argued that the efficiencies achieved by consolidation were ultimately beneficial to consumers, leading to lower prices and greater availability of oil products. This perspective framed the company's dominance not as a product of predatory behavior, but as a reward for innovation and effective organization. The narrative of Rockefeller as a shrewd businessman, a master strategist who understood the intricacies of supply, demand, and transportation with unparalleled clarity was undeniable. His systematic approach to building Standard Oil involved not merely acquiring existing businesses, but fundamentally re-engineering the industry. He recognized that control over transportation, particularly the railroads, was as crucial as control over refining. His acumen in negotiating favorable terms, securing rebates, and even investing in pipeline construction demonstrated a comprehensive understanding of the entire value chain. This meticulous planning and execution, while contributing to his immense success, also fueled the public's perception of an almost Machiavellian pursuit of power. The societal impact of this immense industrial organism was profound. Standard Oil's influence extended to the very fabric of American life, providing the illumination that extended the productive day, the lubricants that powered machinery, and the raw materials that fueled nascent industries. The company's efficiency and scale made kerosene once a luxury, an accessible commodity for millions of households. This widespread availability of affordable energy was a critical component of the era's progress, enabling advancements in manufacturing, transportation, and domestic life. The problem of energy access, a fundamental requirement for modernization, was addressed with remarkable effectiveness. Yet, this very success created a paradox. The power that enabled such widespread benefit also generated significant public anxiety. The concentration of wealth and influence in the hands of individuals like Rockefeller raised fundamental questions about the balance of power in a democratic society. How could the interests of the many be protected when economic power was so heavily concentrated? These were the pressing issues of the Gilded Age, and John D. Rockefeller and Standard Oil stood at the epicenter of this national conversation. The public perception was a battleground, with narratives of industrial genius clashing with accusations of predatory capitalism, each shaping the understanding of Rockefeller's legacy and the future direction of American industry. The enduring controversy stemmed from the fact that his actions simultaneously represented the pinnacle of business innovation and the source of deep-seated societal unease and duality that would continue to define his historical significance. The immense success forged through industrial enterprise presented a unique challenge. The very scale of achievement, the power to reshape markets and influence national economies, generated a complex public discourse. This era grappled with profound questions about the societal implications of concentrated wealth and the mechanisms by which such power could serve the broader good. The public consciousness, wrestling with narratives of both industrial innovation and the potential for unchecked influence, sought a framework for understanding and channeling this transformative energy. It was within this landscape of societal evolution and economic dynamism that John D. Rockefeller's later endeavors would unfold, shifting the focus from the accumulation of capital to its strategic deployment for societal advancement. The latter decades of Rockefeller's life witnessed a deliberate and systematic redirection of his formidable resources towards philanthropic pursuits. This was an evolution, a profound recalibration of purpose, driven by a desire to address some of the most pressing issues of the day. The problems were manifold: the pervasive threat of infectious diseases, the need for widespread access to education, and the fundamental quest to improve the general welfare of the populace. Rockefeller approached these societal challenges with the same analytical rigor and organizational acumen that had defined his business career. He recognized that true progress demanded more than mere financial contribution. It required an intelligent, evidence-based strategy, a commitment to scientific inquiry, and a long-term vision for impact. A cornerstone of this philanthropic revolution was the establishment of the Rockefeller Institute for Medical Research in 1901. At a time when medical science was rapidly advancing, yet still grappling with the mysteries of disease, the Institute was conceived as a sanctuary for pure scientific investigation. The prevailing challenges included understanding fundamental causes of illnesses like pneumonia, tuberculosis, and poliomyelitis, diseases that ravaged communities and exacted a devastating toll. The prevailing methods often relied on empirical observation and limited theoretical frameworks. Rockefeller's vision for the Institute was audacious: to create an environment where the brightest minds could pursue groundbreaking research without the immediate pressure of practical application, trusting that fundamental discoveries would ultimately yield the most profound benefits. The Institute's approach was revolutionary. It eschewed the traditional model of hospital-based research, which was often constrained by patient care demands, and instead fostered an independent laboratory setting. This allowed for sustained, in-depth exploration of biological processes. Early work focused on bacteriology and immunology, fields that were at the forefront of understanding infectious agents. The Institute's scientists, such as Simon Flexner, its first director, and later luminaries like Peyton Roos, who discovered that viruses could cause cancer, embarked on investigations that would fundamentally alter the course of medical knowledge. Roos's Nobel Prize-winning work, for instance, demonstrated that a virus could transmit hereditary material, laying crucial groundwork for molecular biology and virology. Decades later, the Institute provided the resources, the intellectual freedom, and the collaborative environment that enabled such paradigm-shifting discoveries. This was philanthropy as an engine of scientific discovery, a deliberate investment in the expansion of human understanding. Parallel to the medical research endeavors, the General Education Board, founded in 1902, and later endowed with substantial Rockefeller funds, aimed to elevate the quality and accessibility of education across the United States. The educational landscape of the early 20th century was marked by significant disparities. Rural schools often lacked resources. Urban schools struggled with overcrowding and varied quality, and higher education, while developing, was not universally accessible. The board's mission was to foster educational excellence and equity, tackling problems ranging from teacher training and curriculum development to the establishment of public school systems in the South, which had historically lagged behind. The General Education Board's approach was characterized by its strategic, targeted interventions. Rather than simply distributing funds, The board conducted extensive surveys and analyses to identify critical needs. This data-driven philanthropy allowed for the allocation of resources to areas where they could have the most significant impact. For example, the board supported the development of common-level agricultural extension programs, which brought scientific knowledge directly to farmers, improving agricultural practices in rural economies. It also played a pivotal role in establishing and strengthening public health departments, recognizing the inextricable link between education, public health, and societal well-being. The board's support for teacher training programs, particularly for African American educators in the South, addressed the systemic inequalities that hindered educational progress for a significant portion of the population. This was philanthropy as a force for systemic reform, a commitment to building the intellectual and social capital of the nation. The legacy of Rockefeller's philanthropic endeavors extends far beyond the specific institutions he founded or the grants he awarded. His model of systematic, research-driven philanthropy set a precedent for future generations of benefactors. He demonstrated that wealth could be a powerful tool for societal progress when wielded with intelligence, foresight, and a commitment to empirical evidence. The institutions he established, from the Rockefeller Institute, now the Rockefeller University, to the Rockefeller Foundation, became enduring centers of scientific inquiry and public service, continuing to shape advancements in medicine, public health, and education. The impact of these initiatives resonates profoundly in the modern era. The fundamental biological insights gleaned from the early work at the Rockefeller Institute laid the groundwork for countless medical breakthroughs, from the development of antibiotics to the understanding of genetic mechanisms. The public health infrastructure that benefited from the General Education Board's support continues to be the backbone of disease prevention and health promotion efforts worldwide. The emphasis on scientific method and data-driven decision-making in philanthropy, pioneered by Rockefeller, remains a gold standard for effective social impact. John D. Rockefeller's life story, therefore, transcends a simple narrative of industrial accumulation. It is a testament to the transformative power of strategic philanthropy, a demonstration of how immense resources, guided by a commitment to scientific progress and societal betterment, can foster enduring positive change. His legacy is etched not only in the institutions he created, but in the very fabric of modern scientific understanding and public health initiatives that continue to improve lives across the globe. He offered a powerful example of how the challenges of societal progress could be met with innovation, intellect, and a profound sense of responsibility, leaving an indelible mark on the trajectory of human advancement.
We really appreciate you tuning into this AI-powered presentation. Our goal is to push the boundaries of AI in content creation, and your input is invaluable. If there's a particular subject you'd like to see us tackle next, or if you have suggestions on how we could fine-tune our AI's creative prompts, please don't hesitate to leave your ideas in the comments section. We're excited to bring you more unique content very soon.